Harrison here with a hot topic, a rant, whatever you want to call it. Um, I grew up in an era where albums were king. Of course, I started with little 45s, but albums were king. And then, of course, when you get your driver's license, it becomes about traveling in your car. That becomes your kingdom. And for me, it started with 8 tracks, and it went to cassettes. And then eventually, of course, we had CDs. And when CDs replaced albums, I didn't get rid of my albums, but I did purchase a lot of the ones that I had that I played a lot on CD. Now, the CD opened up the frequency response to a wider thing that a wider frequency response that an album couldn't produce at the time, and I became a fan of that. I knew that an album left in the car could melt, and of course they could skip so easily. So I did enjoy the move to CDs, and I became a huge fan and have thousands of CDs. And I kept a lot of the albums. And then we got into this era of MP3s. And I have to say, when I would compare the sound of an MP3 to a CD, I was shocked at how horrible the MP3 sounded. They sounded like listening, to me, it sounded like listening to, the old kids when you make a Dixie cup with a string and you're talking to each other and going like this from a distance. That's what the MP3 sounded like to me. They sounded horrible. Sounded very tinny and thin. Over time, different formats got better sounding things. And of course, I did get an iTunes account. I didn't buy a lot of stuff off iTunes because I would just load what I had onto iTunes so I could put it on my iPod. I was never a fan of having that music on my phone because I didn't want to have my phone on to listen to music. I wanted to keep it separate. Now, iTunes has kind of shifted and gone by the wayside in a lot of ways because of streaming. And that's the thing now. Now, I'm not a fan of streaming. I understand the purpose of it. And I have it because I have an Amazon Prime account, and with that I get Amazon Music, so I search things out. But I can tell you some of the recordings that I seek out and look for that pop up on the streaming services are not the same recordings that I grew up listening to. They've been remastered, and by now a lot of them have gone through auto tune, and they've done so many things where it doesn't even sound like what I grew up to or with. And I get it. They're marketing to a younger crowd and doing all that kind of stuff. But see, people, why don't you just get rid of all those things? Why do you carry them around? Because why do you keep your CDs? Because I'm guaranteeing you, the mix that I have of Evolution by Journey is not the same mix that's on, the streaming platforms right now. And I guarantee if you have Hotel California by the Eagles and you listen to the thing, it's not the same. It doesn't sound the same. It's not mixed the same. Things have changed. And it's happened to a lot of recordings to where you go on YouTube and anything and search stuff. It's not the same as a lot of it was originally. It's the same song. It's even the same recording in terms of when it was recorded, but it's been remastered and all kinds of things have been added and done to it. So now I'm not griping that happens, but I'm saying that, the accessibility to make music at your fingertips and accessible is great to the consumer. But to people who grew up differently, all my Buddy Rich albums, I can't find that stuff on any kind of social platform or streaming service. And if I did, it's not the same. Same with several of the recordings that I have. They have been remastered. I don't know how many times the Beatles things have been remastered and sound completely different. And and again, I mentioned Journey. You can get Journey's greatest hits, and you can go back and listen to some of the early stuff, and it's not the same. Things have been changed, and I get it. I understand what it is. I still think the sound quality on the streaming is not as good. But what it does do for me is it gives me a chance to listen to something first and make a decision if it's something I want to buy. Now, one of my rants is trying to buy that has become very difficult. There are things that are only available in streaming, and I hate that. I want that physical CD. I still want that. But, I digress, I guess. I can find some of it. if the artist decides to do it. But a lot of record companies aren't doing that. They just release singles and they go with that format. And I get it. That's the younger crowd. I'm just saying that for me, I want to support the artist. And part of supporting that artist is buying something. Rather than paying a service that gives them a minute amount, I would rather buy a CD that they make more money off of. So I still support the physical form of owning some kind of a record or CD or stuff. Now, I'm not a fan of buying albums anymore unless I happen to find some that are in vintage shops or happen to find them at a thrift store or whatever. Something that I might have been looking for, especially if it's old school and I know it's more like the original recording. I don't buy the new albums because I don't think it's a better format. Some people might argue. I would still prefer that CD. That all being said, I support music and I support buying a physical form. I probably got off track with all that, but I admire the fact that it's at your fingertips. I don't admire the fact that it's changed so many times. And sometimes I don't necessarily feel like the change or the remastering or the re-recording or whatever is for the better. But it happens.